Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Jays Sit Down podcast. I'm your host, Jade, and today we were going to be talking about the players in the NFL with the most improved going into the 2025 season. These are a couple of guys on my list that, after the past couple of years, I think they have the most burden, so to speak, on their backs going into the 2025 NFL season. Most improved to not only their teammates and their coaches, ownership, but themselves, and if they want to continue to have a sustained, sufficient NFL career, right? So we're going to get into this list here in a second. I'll give you my picks. You guys can let me know if you think there should be some more players on this list or guys that you think I missed. Let me know in the comment section down below, please. But first off, before we get off into that, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check us out here on Jays With Down on YouTube. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Check us out there. Jays Fit Down, exclamation point. You can find, you'll find us right there. And we're also on TikTok, Instagram, Jays Fit Down Pod. But players most improved in 2025. So first off, Anthony Richardson is the guy that I believe should be number one on this list. This is a guy drafted in 2023. He was supposed to be this next, big project at quarterback, right? You looked at him at Florida, he's got the big body, he's got the cannon for the arm, and, he can run, he's giving you Cam Newton, he's giving you Josh Allen vibes, right? That's what he's giving you, but a little less polished as a passer. And people were like, okay, you know what? Yeah, he's not as polished a passer as maybe Cam and Josh were when they were coming out of college, but we can work on that. That can be worked on. That can be fixed. He can fix that, and he'll grow, and it won't be an issue. Now, fast forward to where we are now. He just finished year 2 in the NFL, and here's the thing too. It's like with quarterbacks, it's a different thing because they're, as many people would say, the most important player on a football team in the NFL. And they're on a bit of a shorter leash. So it's like, if you've been in the league 2 years as a quarterback, and you kind of haven't got it by year 2, if it hasn't clicked by that point, if you were thrust into the starting position as a rookie and you still haven't gotten it, everything together by year 2, then you're on a very, very tight leash. It's like you're on thin ice, right? And I don't know if that's I'm stuck between, is that totally fair or is it not? It's just depending on the expectations of the ownerships of these teams, these franchises, the coaches, and most of them are kind of in that same ballpark where it's like, hey, we draft a guy this high, and as opposed to a few other prospects that may have been just as good or better, then we believe that he can be our franchise guy, our franchise quarterback, and if he has not shown us that through his first 2 years, then it's like, okay, then they're thinking about like the option of pulling the plug on him is in their minds, or bringing in competition to challenge him, as the Indianapolis Colts have done, bringing in Daniel Jones, who went to Minnesota after getting cut by the Vikings last year after signing that big contract, but that's a whole mess within itself. We're not going to really get into. But yes, the Colts brought in Daniel Jones to compete with Anthony Richardson. Now, theoretically, Anthony Richardson should beat Daniel Jones out in training camp and competition, when they start practice and stuff, right, in the offseason. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. I just know that Anthony Richardson is a guy for me that has he has the most to prove going to 2025 for sure. He finished the year last year passing for 1,814 yards, 8 touchdowns, 12 picks. It's not going to cut it in the NFL. He's got to limit the turnovers. He's got to figure out, he knows how to play the game of football. It's just something Anthony Richardson has got to figure out how to balance. He's just got to figure out how to play the game at the NFL level in a consistent manner, because we've seen flashes of his arm throughout the last couple of years. We've seen the flashes of what he could do, what the potential is. All the big talk with him was his potential, and he hasn't hit that yet. Now, it's only been 2 years, but again, the way things are now in the NFL, and someone even arguing college football, it's like you're on that tight leash. It's like, you got to come out the gate flying or somewhat close to it if you're drafted at this high draft position, and whatnot. But for him, he hasn't done that yet. So that's kind of the main thing going into the 2025 season that I would definitely be looking out for is Anthony Richardson going to be able to, get over whatever bumps he is that he's going through, stay healthy, stay on the field, get better at his passing and practice and get more precise and, learn the offense more he's knows it by now, I'm sure, but learn it in a way that he's able to play to his strengths and into his advantages, right? Sometimes in football, you got to be able to use the game to your advantage. Personally, being a player, you're going to have to figure out. Sometimes you just got to figure out, how you can use what you do well to your advantage, even if that's not what you were maybe fully coached to do or whatnot. Sometimes you have to improvise, so to speak. And Anthony Richardson he's got to figure out how to play this game at a level where, it's easier for him to go out there and play his best brand of football. He's got to figure out that method to doing that, right? So up next on my list is Trevor Lawrence, right? So now Trevor Lawrence, as we all know, was big hype going into the 2021 draft for him. He was supposed to be, like the Jaguar savior at QB. And, now granted, he went through 3 coaches in a couple of years, and that's no picnic, and that's not an easy thing for any player to do or go through. But being a number 1 pick, he had these high expectations. He had this big hype on him coming into the NFL, and has as much as turnovers as he has his touchdowns, 68, or I think he has 68 turnover to 69 touchdowns, and that's total throughout his career. That's not very good. He's battling injuries, whatnot. So Trevor Lawrence, man, he is going to have to be able to stay on the field, stay healthy, and also kind of the same thing. He's got to figure out, he's got to be more consistent, with his passing, decision making as well. Trevor Lawrence, as we all know, he's a good football player. Maybe not as great as many people thought he would be, number 1 pick or top pick worthy, and probably not, right? But that's just how the ball rolls, right? And so sometimes, but like I said, I don't think Trevor is, I don't think he's this superstar player. I've talked about him before on this podcast. He's a good quarterback, but he's just not that superstar worth that big contract that Jacksonville gave him. But he has it, so now he's got to go out there. He's got to do something with it that he hasn't been able to do the past couple of seasons in Jacksonville. So that's another guy on my list that I really would keep an eye on as we move into the 2025 season here. Then up next, I got Christian Watson from the Green Bay Packers. A little bit, maybe a surprise to some of you guys. Christian Watson was a guy who was drafted high by Green Bay a couple of years ago to be, I think he was Green Bay's first wide receiver drafted in the first round because they never really do that. They never really go for receivers that early, and they believe he was a guy that could be that number 1, that could step into that number 1 role, when Davante Adams eventually left and when Davante eventually did leave. Christian Watson just hasn't been able to stay on the field. He's not as consistent as they like him to be. He's a guy that, if he's on his P's and Q's, he'll really be a big threat down the field, that big body, tall, he went to North Dakota State and watching him there, he was a really good player for the Bisons. And I'm like, well, you know what? Green Bay got themselves a good one. Like but it's just a matter of he has not been able to stay on the field, and the consistency has not been there at the receiver position. And in a league where you've got to have like the receiver and quarterback play have got to be on par in order for you to be successful. And as a team, as a franchise, that's, and I think Jayden Reed has kind of stepped into that role as the number 1 receiver for the Packers, and that's okay. Jayden Reed's a very talented player as well. He showed up big for the Packers a lot last year, and even in the playoffs too. Probably the only player out there who was doing any type of work in that game against the Eagles, I think it was. And I just, Christian Watson definitely was a disappointment, probably to a lot of Packers fans and definitely just football fans in general, from what the potential was for him to be as an NFL receiver. He has not hit that yet, and he's going to year 4 or 5, I think. So it's just something that I wanted to talk about here on the show today with him, because it was just like he could have been that number one, go ball guy, that number one receiver. You throw it up there, he's gonna make those contested catches, those big time plays, 50-50 balls down the field, being vertically stretched down the field. But just drops and things like that, and injuries, like I say, have plagued him so far in his career, and it's unfortunate to see for a player like him, and for Green Bay. I mean, in general, this is it's a team that they're not far. They're close. They just got to, offensively is where their problems lie as a team, but defensively they're really talented. But offensively they just have some issues. So that's really, I mean, that's kind of the main gist of what I want to talk about on the show today on Jay's Fifth Down. Just like I said, the Christian Watson Packers, and then of course, like I say, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence. So if you guys agree, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Again, like I said, let me know any players that you think I missed or who have the most improved going into the 2025 NFL season. And we'll see you next time on the show on Jay's Fifth Down. Thank you.